He conquered the arena, but the real challenge began after the battle. The blood was still steaming on the Colosseum sand when Drusus, the gladiator who defeated the emperor's champion, was forced to face his reward. It wasn't gold, it wasn't freedom. It was an impossible choice, any woman from Domitian's harem. But in Rome, a gift from the emperor is always a trap, and this one was a death sentence disguised as lust. 50,000 throats roared Drusus's name, but he heard only the last sigh of the man fallen at his feet, Cassius Niger, the undefeated champion of the Emperor Domitian, whose body now lay with its throat open like a red smile. The sun beat on the bronze blades of the statues, making the marble of the imperial box shine like false gold. And there, seated between painted courtesans and stiffened generals, Domitian smiled. Not with his eyes, never with his eyes. Drusus, ex-legionary, a slave for 3 years, felt the weight of that victory like an invisible chain. It wasn't glory that roared in the arena, it was hunger. Hunger for blood and power. And he had just delivered the rarest of spectacles to the emperor, the defeat of his own champion. As servants dragged Cassius's body away, a lictor descended from the Palatine. "The Caesar grants your reward," he announced. "For having vanquished the imperial champion, you may choose any woman from Domitian's harem to spend this night, or forever, if she accepts." A murmur rippled through the stands. Choosing an imperial concubine wasn't luxury, it was suicidal audacity. They were spies, symbols, sacred property of the Dominus et Deus. Drusus raised his eyes. Domitian tilted his head, like a bored god rolling dice with human destinies. "Choose wisely, gladiator," the emperor said softly. "Some jewels shine, but they cut the fingers." Drusus was not Roman. He had come from Lusitania, the son of a blacksmith who dared refuse to surrender his forges to the imperial tribute. For that, his family was sold after the revolt of 78 AD. His mother died on the crossing, his brother in the mines of Sardinia. He survived out of stubbornness and from a talent with the sword inherited from men who forged steel. In the ludus of Batiatus, he learned that the arena doesn't reward strength, but cunning, that the true enemy is in the eyes of the crowd, and that nothing in Rome is given without a price. Therefore, when he was taken to the imperial harem, not as a guest, but as a poisoned prize, he walked with clenched fists. The scent of incense and jasmine hung like a perfumed trap. Women from every province watched him in silence, some with curiosity, others with contempt. Then she entered. Not with light steps, but with the posture of one who still remembers what it is to walk free. She wore a simple white linen stola, no jewels. Her black hair was bound by a single ribbon of blue silk, the color of senators' children. Her green eyes met Drusus's without fear. "My name is Livia Marcella," she said, "daughter of Quintus Marcellus, consul accused of treason by Domitian executed. My family ruined. My honor bought with silence." Drusus frowned. "Why are you here?" "Because I refused to marry one of the emperor's freedmen. This was my punishment, to serve in his bed until he breaks me, or forgets me." There was something about her that didn't belong in the harem, dignity, the same he had seen in his mother. "You are not a concubine," he said. "I am what Rome has made me," she replied with a bitter half-smile. "But I can still choose who I spend my night with, if I even have that choice anymore." The lictor, impatient, coughed. The gladiator must choose now. Drusus looked at the other women, beautiful, trained, empty. Then his eyes returned to Livia. "I choose her." No one applauded, but Domitian, watching from afar, smiled again, this time with his eyes. That night there was no luxury. Just 2 exhausted bodies in a simple room. The moon silvered the marble floor. Livia sat on the edge of the bed. "You don't have to do anything," she said, not looking at him. "I know this is your reward, but I am not a trophy." Drusus stood by the window, arms crossed. I have never seen a woman in the imperial harem refuse a man. Perhaps because they've never had a choice. He approached. Why did you choose me? I didn't choose you. I chose not to be chosen. There is a difference. Drusus knelt before her not as a servant but as an equal. He touched the back of her hand. Her skin was soft but her fingers trembled. I was chosen too, he said, to fight, to kill, to entertain a god that doesn't exist. She finally looked at him. In her eyes there was no desire, there was recognition. You won today, but tomorrow, the emperor does not forgive humiliation. Cassius was his right hand. He forced me to kill my training brother last week. Cassius laughed while he bled. Livia swallowed. Then she raised her hand and touched Drusus's face. Then tonight is not about pleasure, she murmured. It's about remembering we are still human. He leaned in. The air between them grew warm. The smell of sweat, dried blood, and jasmine. For an instant, the world disappeared. But Drusus stopped. The arena instinct screamed. If I kiss you, the emperor will know, and he will use it against you. He already uses everything against me, she answered with a sad smile. But tonight is mine. And it was she who kissed him. It was brief, profound, full of promises neither of them could keep. Her lips tasted of salt and watered-down wine and of truth. There was nothing more than that, just that kiss and the shared silence. The next morning, Drusus was summoned to the forum. Domitian, in a theatrical gesture, offered him freedom and a place in the Praetorian Guard. Serve me, the emperor said, and you will be richer than senators. But Drusus looked toward the palace windows, where, between the columns, he saw for an instant the shape of a woman in a white stola. I prefer the arena, he replied. Domitian laughed, but his eyes narrowed. Then return to it, and pray your next opponent is not me. In the following days, rumors spread. They said the gladiator had refused freedom out of pride. Others whispered he had fallen in love with an imperial concubine, a crime worse than treason. Livia was transferred to the inner chambers, but before she disappeared, she left a note with a trusted slave. If you live, remember, I am not your reward, I am your choice. The next fight was a trap. Drusus against 4 Bessurai armed with nets and tridents. The crowd knew this was the end. But Drusus fought like a man who no longer feared death. He used the sand, the sun, even the crowd's screams as weapons. He killed all 4. When the dust settled, he was standing, bleeding, alive. Domitian, furious, left the Colosseum, but that night, a messenger brought an order. Drusus would fight the new imperial champion, a Nubian giant named Sekhet, undefeated in 37 combats. It was a death sentence disguised as a spectacle. On the eve, the old palace slave visited Drusus. He handed him a small ceramic vial. From the lady, he whispered, it is not poison, it is aconitum diluted. A scratch is enough to weaken the muscles. Sekhet will fall. Drusus held the vial. The easy victory guaranteed survival. But he thought of Livia's kiss, of the dignity in her eyes. She hadn't loved him for being a skilled killer. She loved him for being human. He smashed the vial on the floor. Tell her I choose to die as a man, not as a shadow. On the day of the combat, the Colosseum was packed. Sekhet entered wearing a lion's cloak, his muscles glistening with oil. Drusus entered with no armor, just his gladius and a tunic. The fight lasted less than 10 minutes. Sekhet was stronger, but Drusus had something the Nubian did not, desperation with purpose. At the right moment, he drove his blade between the giant's ribs. Sekhet fell to his knees. Drusus leaned in and whispered, "You are not my enemy, Rome is." Then he turned to the imperial box. Domitian was on his feet, pale with rage. He raised his thumb, down. But Drusus didn't wait. He ran toward the gladiator's exit, not to flee, but to fulfill a promise. He found Livia in the palace gardens, surrounded by guards. She saw him and ran. When they embraced, the guards hesitated. "You won," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "No, but I bought us time." That night, with the help of a Greek freedman, the two fled Rome. They boarded a merchant ship to Alexandria. They say they lived under false names, he as a blacksmith, she as a teacher of rhetoric. They never returned to Rome, but every night they lit a candle for Mars, not as the god of war, but as the guardian of those who choose love over power. Domitian was assassinated 3 years later. But in Alexandria, in a simple house near the lighthouse, an old gladiator and a former patrician still kissed under the moon, not as a prize, not as a reward, but as a choice. Because in Rome, everything had a price, but true love, that only existed outside the empire's walls. And the blood that once steamed on the Colosseum sand, it dried. But the kiss that followed, that still echoes,